Thanks for joining us with another exciting episode of the TruthSeekah Podcast. Today, I'm going to be joined by Tim Freke, and we're going to be speaking about the deep awake state.
What characterizes the deep awake state is a shift in consciousness where it's unique to everyone, but there's common threads which are found throughout history and around the world, which is where I've written all these different books on all these different spiritual traditions. There's a human state. And that human state is when you are super alive. And with that comes a profound sense of communion and oneness. And then most important of all, this love. And sometimes also beautiful euphoria, the feeling of uplifted spirit, which is quite, it's just exquisite. The way you get to that point is you just pay it attention. If you play a musical instrument, the first time you pick it up, you can't really play it. How do you learn to play? You just keep playing.
Keep doing it.
And if you do it enough times, it becomes familiar.
Yeah. We talk about a lot of times the world religions that have a spiritual practice and have this spiritual ecstasy within their practice. Even if it's not in the holy books, it kind of turns into maybe a church service and the music is playing and you're in that state and you feel one with God and nothing else matters and the bills don't matter and just love and God and I'm accepted for who I am. Like this is the same thing we're talking about, whether it's the Kundalini or something that you feel during yoga or just being mindful. So with someone who goes to church every week, they have this routine of the euphoria of God loves me, let him pour his love out on me and feel it and get back there. If someone doesn't have a religious routine every week, how would we do that? Is it just find time when we can, or what?
Really great question. Before I answer it, I'm going to give you a little quote from Thomas More. He said at one point, the soul has an absolute and unforgiving need for regular excursions into enchantment. Like you said, what you need to build in is regular excursions into enchantment so that you just remember on a regular basis. And if we do that, then the journey stays alive. If we don't do that, the journey goes black and white, doesn't it? It goes dead. And suddenly you're caught in it and it's on top of you and you've forgotten you're alive, and being alive doesn't sound very good. So how do you make sure that you stay in touch? That's where you need either a community or a practice. Now, the great thing with what's happening now is that these communities and practices can involve online connection, exactly like we're doing now.
Exactly, yeah.
It doesn't have to be your locality. It doesn't have to be, what's on offer? The religion you were born into. No more. Now everything is on offer. Yeah. So you can find the thing that's right for you. It's about paying attention to your deepest being. It's about learning to notice who you are beyond your body. That's easy. There's this deeper level to us, isn't there? There's this body you can see right now waving at you. There it is. And then but actually, there's something behind that. There's psyche, what used to be called soul. Yeah. Mind, imagination. There's something which is on another level. It's not made of matter, but it's connecting with you. These words are coming from it. So you're aware of that. And then this deep thing that really marks out all of the mystical traditions, all the deep traditions, is that there's even a level beyond soul, which gets called spirit or pneuma or nous or Atman in the East, or Buddha nature. Doesn't matter what you call it. That's your being, which is your deep being as the experiencer of this moment. And the deep meditation is about paying that attention. And as you learn how to do that, the deep awake state just arises of itself. There's nothing in the way. You don't have to get rid of your ego. You don't have to mortify your body. You just let yourself be as you are. You're fine. In fact, appreciate yourself as you are. And just notice this deep, deep level to your being, which is the witness. It's awareness itself, witnessing this moment. And if you can find a way to come back into that deep being, there's this profound oneness and this incredible all-embracing love, which is just there, waiting to be discovered.
What are some of the other things that you're able to pull out of that state? Because it's almost like you commune with your higher self, like there's something watching over you or guiding you that knows what you need, what your life journey is supposed to be. And when you go into that state, you get insight about what to do. And if you go deep enough, how to do it. The power behind it is almost like it says in the scriptures that the kingdom of heaven is within you. and you don't need anything outside of yourself, that all you have to do is kind of go within. That's one thing that I can't say against organized religions, because it's almost like they're preserving that. And all of the things that happen in like a charismatic or open church service, as far as like speaking in tongues or glossala, like this is something that's practiced by every religion, and they're still doing it. So there's a beauty in like it's still being preserved. It's still teaching you to listen to the rhythm of the drum and go into hypnosis. Even they won't teach it like that, they're still keep in touch with that primitive side of our being, of something that's been practiced ever since we were here, to go into those states, man, and to go in there and come out with tears and come out crying and stuff like that. Like, what's the parallels that you've seen? Because I totally believe it's the same thing. When you feel that euphoria, I felt it in the church and I felt it during Kundalini yoga. It's the same thing. That euphoria.
So there's the difference, if there is one, which is not that they are different. It's just that people are involved in something which is a rigid dogma.
Yeah.
Think that's it. Whereas as you explore, you realize, oh, it's all it.
Exactly.
But each one has a different tone of voice, and each one probably has a different problem that it hasn't dealt with,
yes,
and an obstacle, which is, if you get into it, you'll find, oh, that's not quite right, is it? Each one's evolving.
Yeah.
Each one you can get trapped in. Each one you need to move beyond. And so the key thing is you making the journey. And like I said, I almost joined a Franciscan friary when I was younger. I also had an Indian guru who at the time I thought was God. It turned out he wasn't. But I'm so grateful for each step, because each step took me further. The key thing is keep moving, I think, to trust your own intuitions, but try and avoid, to begin with, it's hard, but it gets easier. Try and avoid thinking, oh, this is it. Whatever it is, the fake arriving is the only thing which stops you traveling.
Yeah.
As soon as you think you've arrived, you'll stop traveling.
You're absolutely right.
There's a great description by one of my mentors when I was younger, Ram Dass. I remember him saying in his experience, the spiritual path was step, fall, up, brush. Step, fall, up, brush. Step, fall. And it's like, that's... So rather than it being about, why aren't I in anything the whole time? Actually saying, look, the reason we're not in it the whole time is because you're evolving.
Yeah. And
evolution means you move forward. And moving forward means you see things you haven't seen before. So, when I was young, I wanted to be right. Now I want to be wrong, because every time I'm wrong, I learn something and something new opens up.
And be okay with that, too. That's a huge level. I don't have all the answers, but I'm giving you a technique that does. Like, if you go to this special place, in the scriptures, it's called the secret place. To go into the secret place and pray, spend time with your Heavenly Father, and you'll know things. I think it's Jeremiah 33:3 says, come into this place and I will show you things that you do not know and cannot find out. And that's what's beautiful to me, because we go into this place to commune with the one, and we learn things that we'll never learn studying 1,000 years, and stuff nobody's even speaking on. Like, we go into this state and pull out stuff like, where did I get this from, That
makes me want to share with you one of my favorite quotes from the Gospel of Thomas, the Gnostic Gospel. Because, for me, this meditation, whatever you want to call it, it's simply looking at what is. And it's pointed to, there's a lovely line in the Gospel of Thomas, which reminded me of the thing he said from Jeremiah, but it's kind of even more. Jesus says, I will reveal to you what cannot be seen, what cannot be heard, what cannot be touched, and what cannot be imagined. And it reminds me, I love it, it reminds me of a quote from the Upanishads, which is like 5 or even more 100 years earlier. And in the Upanishads, it's almost the same, but it's like a koan, or it's a riddle. It says, what is it that cannot be seen, which makes seeing possible? What is it that cannot be heard, that makes listening possible? What is it that cannot be touched, which makes touch possible? What is it that can't be imagined, which makes imagination possible? And what I love about those is I think what they're pointing to is our own deep being. And our deep being is what's looking, but it hasn't got any shape, and it's got no color. Everything that's got a shape or a color is what it's looking at. But the thing itself, being, awareness, doesn't have any color, doesn't have any shape. It makes no noise. It's what's listening, but it makes no noise. It's what's feeling touch, but you can't touch it. So the deep mystical teaching at the heart of all of these different religions that I've written about, one of the deep teachings is your deepest being has no form to it. It's not in your experience. Now, these are really deep ideas, but when you get it, you're seeing that what you are right now, your body's in your experience, your soul's in your experience, that's your individuality, but your being is before your experience. It has no form. It just is. It has no other qualities. It just is. So you tune into, there's a fantastic mystical text called The Cloud of Unknowing. It's a medieval text. And it talks about the need to become conscious of your naked being, just that you are. Not that you are this or you're that, but just that you are, your I am. And if you take your attention and sink it back, another wonderful text called The Stranger, it's a very early Gnostic text. And the goddess of wisdom says to the stranger, take your attention to the rear or behind all your activity, behind all your experience, and just be conscious that you are. And in deep meditation, you can close down the senses and retreat right back into your being. And there's this vast ocean of being. And suddenly there's this experience of vast oneness, an oceanic being, which has just been there the whole time. It's just you didn't notice it before. We've made this mistake, and it's particularly coming out of America, actually, I think, although Europe's very infected with it, we are here too, that somehow being awake is to do with being happy all the time, or things always going right.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't got what you want, it's your fault. You're not creating the life you want. You know, that's all superficial. The great heroes of spirituality in the West in the past were not happy all the time, and neither did they get the life they wanted. Exactly. They were courageous adventurers. They were people who took on the challenge of being alive and discovering love. And what I see these days is just different states of consciousness, and they're all changing and they're all moving. So what happens with religion is it attracts a certain stage of consciousness. It doesn't matter which religion. It could be Christianity, it could be Islam, it could be Hinduism. It will attract a state of consciousness which manifests in that way, and then people will go that for a while until something deep within them goes, no, I need more than this, or they read the right book, or they meet the right person, and then they will see a crack and they will start to go out. And as you know, for many people, it's quite a difficult process. It's a state of consciousness which moves, and then out you come. Certainly for me, I'm going to keep learning. So don't expect consistency. Expect, one of my favorite lines from Mohandas Gandhi is when he said, my commitment is to truth, not to consistency. Don't expect me to say the same thing tomorrow that I'm saying today. If I find something more truthful, I will say that. Yeah.
There's a quote that I want to share. I think it kind of goes directly with what we're saying, and this is from Manly P. Hall, which is one of my favorite teachers. So he says, the religious experience moves inevitably from the congregational worship towards an inward communion. No matter how desperately certain creeds attempt to oppose the concept, religion finally becomes a personal spiritual experience. Each person must find their own faith and must find it within. Religious systems may supply us with the instrument of this personal quest, but cannot accomplish the quest for us.
Yeah, that's right. So you're born into a culture. Everyone is born into a culture. And traditionally, a big part of that culture was whatever religion you were born in. So that gave you the vocabulary with which you could explore soul and spirit. But for you to make it your own, you have to doubt it. Doubt is what makes us conscious. When there's no doubt, we stay within our cultural conditioning. The only thing which sets you free is doubt. Because when you doubt, you take your ideas that you've been indoctrinated with and you do that to them. Now, once you've done that, you can go back to them and go, yeah, I like them. But now they're your idea.
Yeah.
Before they were just put in you by someone else.
Yeah.
Now they're yours. Or you may go, do you know what? That doesn't work for me. But by doubting, questioning, let's use that word. And what strikes me about the religious mindset in that negative way that we've been talking about is that you will hear again and again, doubt is a bad thing. Don't doubt, just believe, just believe. And that's what's holding everyone back.
Yeah.
The minute you go, no, of course, question and doubt and explore and become conscious, then you can wake up from that and it does become your own. It doesn't mean you can't learn from loads and loads of people. It doesn't mean you won't call yourself a something, a Christian. But you will still be yourself.
Yeah.
And you will have found it for you. All I can say is, as one human being to another, this experience is here. It's waiting for you. And it's much closer than you think.
That's true. It's so subtle. And that's what's so powerful to me. In church, they always use Thomas as the doubter, and we don't want to be like Thomas, right? In the scripture, when Jesus comes back, but then you're like, no, Thomas was beautiful. His story is awesome. Like, he just didn't accept it because everyone else was doing it. Oh, there's Jesus. Yeah. He wanted proof. Like, his doubt was something beautiful, and it saved him. And he wasn't just going to come and follow what everybody else is following. No, you got to show me, man. I want proof. And that's the proof in the pudding. It's not like to follow the philosophy of what we're saying. It's like, no, go for yourself. You can explore these realms. You don't need me. I can help you, but you don't need me. It's something personal, and you can go in and experience it for yourself. Just like Thomas, man. I think his story is so beautiful, and there's so many parallels to ours.
And really fun, in my opinion, the Gospel of Thomas is my favorite.
There's some great teachings in there, man.
It's lovely. Got some great lines.
Tim,
great.
Thank you so much. It was a beautiful episode, and there was a lot of knowledge that was shared. And I'm sure, if anything, it sparked people's interest in what we're talking about. And there really is so much power in going into that meditative state and just experiencing oneness and taking that with you.
This is Alexandra Betters of GalacticConnection.com. I have a pre-recorded interview today with a gentleman named Tim Freke. He is a best-selling author of more than 30 books, and we will be reviewing today this book called Deep Awakening. Wake up to oneness and celebrate your individuality, which is just so in alignment with my messages that I share with the audience. So stay tuned. I think you're really going to enjoy hearing this man. He's very deep. For all of you that are not familiar with his work, check out his website while you're listening. It's at timfreke.com, and it's Freke. Can you first start with, I guess you've been doing so many series of books. What inspired you to go here with what is Deep Awake meaning to you?
Well, my books have been through various phases as I've kind of grown as a human being and been on my spiritual journey, because that's what my life is about, what my books are about. The first phase was very much writing books about spiritual traditions. Zen Buddhism, Sufism, shamanism.
Wow.
And going, look, at their heart, there's a common message here. The language is different. The concepts are different. Literally, the language is different because they're written in different places and different times in history. But underneath, once you peel away the differences, and the differences are wonderful, actually, they're great, that's what gives it color. But underneath, what I see is human beings who've had a common or comparable experience. And it's an experience which I've been exploring since I was very young, which gets called awakening, where you come into this deep state of seeing the depths of life and appreciating that you're in a very profound, mysterious experience. And there's numbers of things which characterize it. A state of oneness is something. Love is another big thing. That there's this connection with love, that the whole universe is pulsating with love. And then the last phase of my life, the last 15, 20 years probably, has been about trying to see, okay, so what marked out all these people that I found interesting, whether it's Jalaluddin Rumi, the Muslim, or it's Bodhidharma, the Buddhist. What marked them out for me and made them attract me was that they took what they found and reinvented it for their own time. So it ceased to be a dead doctrine and it became a living experience. So that's what I've tried to do. So the goal I've set myself was, okay, well, I've got to do my best to contribute something which can help us do that today.
I really aligned with you because, you're talking about human-centered spirituality, and a lot of the traditions and the ways in which we've been doing things, whether it's meditation, prayer, ceremonies, all of the old ritualisms, they're finding that simplicity is what's coming and weaving within not only ourselves, but within life, as we call it. And, I just kind of wanted you to talk about this. I love it when you said human-centered and radically world-embracing is a more enlivened way because the world becomes a wonderland. Can you talk a little more about that?
A lot of traditional spirituality was human beings' attempt to understand it then. And the mistake we make is we think somehow that because it's ancient, it's true. And, it's like
so true.
Plato, who's one of my favorite philosophers, thought the brain was a cooling system for the blood. I certainly don't want him doing brain surgery on me.
Wow.
The fact that it's old doesn't make it right. And my feeling is that we're constantly moving on and we need to evolve. So there's two philosophies, I think, in spirituality we can adopt. One which goes, it was all great, and then there was a mess up. And most spirituality is ancient and follows that road. The reason it's all so horrible and we're so much suffering is because something awful has gone wrong and we need to put it right. We're lost in illusion. We fall in as a punishment. The soul is messed up. And what you have to do is get rid of the world and get back home. The reason that things are like they are is because we're evolving towards greater goodness. And that means we need to keep moving forward from something more primitive. And our role is to keep following the good, not because we've fallen, but because we're evolving. And then you see that we don't have to reject the world. In fact, we have to transform it. And that is what we're doing. The fact that we can communicate in 2 different continents, I can see you, this can go out and touch people all over the world. These are incredible evolutionary developments that's happened through not rejecting the world, but by finding the best in ourselves and bringing it into the world. And that is what I mean by, and then it is a wonderland, isn't it? It's beautiful. The world is a beautiful place when we really see it.
One of the main threads throughout your entire book was almost an allowance and a permission for those that are on their spiritual path to not beat themselves up because they actually do feel certain things. I've had this conversation with many people many times. It's okay for you to do things that the spiritual traditional perspective is saying, no, because that's a bad human being that does that kind of thing. And I really want you to get into that because we've never experienced this accelerated growth. We're going through tremendous change, both internally and externally. I get emails from all over the world, people just unhappy with themselves. They feel like they're always falling short because they're angry or they have desires to have a beautiful home. And I'd really like you to expound on that because it's beautifully.
Yeah. When I started doing I run these events called The Deep Awakening where I take people on a journey over a weekend. And I do that all over the world. And when I started doing those, my aspiration, and it felt a big aspiration, was to introduce people to a direct experience of the deep awake state. And what I've started to see has been very interesting. I started to realize, I see. Actually, introducing people to this deep awake state is easier than I thought.
Yes.
The hard thing is persuading people they can love themselves.
Yes.
It's not waking up to this great oneness and the deep self. The hard thing is having the relationship with the personal self. What I found is that if I can allow myself and others to just relax into being a human being, this deep spirit, this deep self opens up of itself, and then it informs the human self, and the human self starts bringing out the best in it. So if we can just get that we can't be evolving unless we're on a journey. And to be on a journey is to get things wrong and to not be all you could be, or even wrestle with really difficult things. So let's treat each other and ourselves with compassion because we're on that journey.
I was just thinking that perhaps one of the other things that has caused people to get maybe stuck or blocked is the spiritual traditions that have really helped us get to where we are today. Perhaps they're just still not able to keep up. And so why would we expect anything to be, equivalent to what we're going through when this is such a unique time for humanity?
I have immense respect, more than I can possibly say, for the men and women who've allowed me to be here, who opened it up, who developed the vocabularies, the techniques, all of those things. Very amazing, wise, compassionate people have done that. But everything moves forward. And let me use the music analogy. It fascinates me that when I listen to, say, Beethoven, I hear classical music, something it's kind of safe, and people do it in a very serious way, and it's old music. When Beethoven wrote that music, people didn't think it was music. People thought it was outrageous, shocking,
that's right.
challenging. Like, what the? And that's what time does. So what we constantly need to do, Carl Jung said it beautifully. He said, you need to keep melting down the old concepts into experience. You have to keep reinventing it. Otherwise it becomes a dead thing.
Yes.
And so there's respect for the past, for having passed it on to us. And now we must run with it until we pass it on to the next generation. And each one has to answer, what can I do with this wisdom I've been given to affect this new situation which we're in now on the evolutionary journey?
I want to read this. You put a quote in here by Albert Einstein about immersing yourself in wonder. It says, the most beautiful and deepest experience someone can have is the sense of the mysterious. It is the underlying principle of religion as well as all serious endeavor in art and science. He who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead, and his eyes are closed. The power.
What a lovely man. It's a breathtaking mystery that we are right now. And it's very easy to fall asleep into it and think, I know. So I don't know what this is. And having that humility and that sense of mystery is what I think that being wrapped in wonder that Einstein talks about.
What did you learn in your journey from meditation?
Meditation, I've always found particularly good at finding the deep stillness. It's the thing which allows me to reach back behind all of it to spirit. And there's this deep, profound, all-encompassing peace. And what happens if I do that? And what happens is you become conscious of your deep being. And suddenly there's this oceanic bliss, this beautiful, huge presence.
Yes. Thank you, Tim. I really treasure this interview. This is very dear to my heart.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I am your host, Matt Belair, and I am so excited to introduce to you today's guest. He has been exploring spirituality since a spontaneous awakening when he was 12 years old, which led him to continually experiment with the ways of transforming consciousness, including intensive meditation, studying for a BA honors in philosophy, and working with the dying. He has written books about all major spiritual traditions of the world. In his latest book, Soul Story, he presents a new philosophy of life. Welcome to the show, Tim Freke.
Very nice to be here, Matt.
I think it's your third book, Wisdom of Zen Masters. I highly recommend people pick that up. That's a timeless classic for me. I guess I'll just leave the floor to you.
It feels like there's a real split where we've kind of rejected religion, and now there's this new spirituality bubbling up, which is really good, but largely irrational, not very well thought through. And so it doesn't make an impact on mainstream intellectual culture, which has got into this very bleak objectivist, only objects exist, and all of the things that spirituality is concerned with are illusions. It's here accidentally. You're here for a moment long enough to go, what the fuck? And then you're gone, and that's it. Although it gives us all of these baubles and wonders and marvelous things, the internet and everything, it also, the small print, you get a life which has no meaning. And that's left us with this collective crisis that we're living lives without meaning. And I have a deep desire to address that and to share a new way of seeing reality which can give it meaning, because I think it has meaning.
I agree with those sentiments. Coming into this reality, going to church as a kid, I remember, one of the concepts being just absolutely terrified of God. That's what religion was. And I remember going to one of my best friend's houses and being like, hey, man, you got to come to church with me because I don't want you to burn in hell for all eternity. It's like there's something wrong with that story. So I think, after we start to piece things together and we start to think about, okay, cool, there's concepts in religion that are great. There's lots of it that's amazing. But somewhere in there, the story got distorted. And if for me personally, I can say that if it doesn't come back to unconditional love, so just to address Christianity, I read a book called Jesus and the Essenes. And it had nothing but unconditional love. And I was like, that resonated more. You know, the second that we get into, if you do this, you're bad and you burn in hell, and then that. And so, and to me, I think it is very important. We've lost our connection to God, to nature, to source. And, you know, I really like the book Conversations with God because it comes back to unconditional love, or you could say nature, or you can say the universe, or your higher self, or whatever you want to describe. But as you said, and you found in your research that it does come back to unconditional love.
My feeling with all of this is that we're in an evolutionary process. In the evolutionary process, we have to keep reinventing or refinding this deep spiritual current and expressing it in a new way for our times. We do something strange with spirituality or with religion, which we don't do with anything else, where we think if something's old, it must be better. The issue is it needs to integrate the wisdom of the past. So it's got the depth. So it's new, but with all the depth of the past. Sometimes it feels to me like this state, which I now call simply being deep awake, this is a natural state. I was very lucky. I had a spontaneous awakening when I was 12 years old. I wasn't in a church. I was sitting on a hill. What I think that set a seed for me was that this is just natural. It's there by virtue of our humanity. So not surprisingly, human beings have woken up in different ways throughout history and in every location. In the ancient world, it was called a gnosis, a knowing. And in the East, it's called Gnana, also means knowing, same word, in India. And what, to me, that refers to is this profound sense that arises quite spontaneously of knowing something actually before words. The phrase that comes to mind for me from this gnosis is, I know that life is fundamentally good. Despite all the suffering, and the suffering is awful, it's worthy of faith. Not faith that everything will always turn out well for Tim, because probably it won't, but faith in something deeper. Faith that there's a goodness even when that happens. It's a faith in life itself, or a faith in love. So the phrase, Matt, which has come up for me when I think about the knowing that arises is life is good, death is safe. It's okay. There's a profound sense in me that this dying business is going to be much better than we expect. But it's all right. It's all right. It's okay. It's not, it's natural to fear it, and it's all right. So life is good, death is safe, and what really matters is love.
What do you recommend for somebody who is like, okay, cool, like I could have a look at this and I want to have the experience, because that's what gnosis is knowing. I've had conversations with people and they're like, you're saying that like you know it. I'm like, yeah, I do know it because I experienced it directly, so I know it. Then it made me think about truth. And truth, there's two that I've kind of deduced now. Maybe you can help me out with this. But one of them is my truth, my direct experience. So if I see a unicorn and I'm looking right at it, that's my experience. It's my truth. I saw a unicorn. I had Sandra Walter on the other day. She's experienced Bigfoot. But she also lived months of the year on Mount Shasta meditating and seeing all kinds of stuff. So how the heck do you know what she experiences? I can just relate if I think she's telling me the truth. So there's my truth, the individual truth, and then there's the all truth, the one truth. That's what I've deduced. I'm wondering if you can just speak on how people can have this experience, because once you have the experience, then there is no going back, and then it's true for you.
The first thing is I want to say about the stuff you're saying about the unicorns. My feeling is, even with everything, this use of questioning, of doubt, is very important. Because when I'm saying, look, I have this gnosis, that doesn't mean that I don't hold it up to scrutiny. And it's important not to just take them on face value. It's important also to know that one's deep intuitions, the things you think you know, as you get older, you're 30-something, I'm 58. And, I can remember that when I was in my 20s, I knew that my guru was the Lord of the universe. And it turned out he wasn't. But at the time, I knew that, like other people know that Jesus is their Lord and Savior. And then they wake up one day and realize that things aren't quite what they thought. And so even with that deep knowing, it's important to keep realizing you can interpret it wrongly. There's maybe further to go.
I think it's important to realize that through awareness, you have options. And how would we start to gain that awareness? Do you think it's asking the right questions, reading the right books?
Let's do something which that people can get right now. If we look at this moment and ask the question, that great spiritual question, who am I? Body and soul is the traditional words. Well, body is nice and obvious. You can see it and touch it. And then there's this word soul. Now, the word soul is a funny word because it's been used in a million ways. I think when I was young, I used to think it was some spooky thing that lived inside me, would pop out when I died or something. I don't know. For me, I want to return to the original meanings of these words because I think they can help us. And the ancient word in the West for soul was psyche, or psyche, actually they say it, but it's a Greek word, ancient Greek. And what it means is, look, pay attention to the moment. It's really, really obvious. You're experiencing two utterly distinct dimensions of reality. You always are. You're experiencing a flow of sensations, colors, sounds, feelings, all of that. The world. And you're experiencing a completely different set of experiences, which are the psyche, or the imagination, or the mind, or the soul. These are all words from different linguistic roots for the same thing. It's not made of matter, is it? It's in its own dimension, but it's very, very real. And then the third thing, which is the place I really wanted to get to right now, is what is traditionally called spirit, pneuma, or nous. In the East, it's called the Atman, or the Buddha nature. That there is a third element. What's the third element? Well, right now, I'm experiencing a flow of sensations and a flow of imagination. Then the question is, who's the experiencer of all of that? And that's what spirit is. It's what we call the I, the deep I. The thing which is experience. A modern word would be awareness, I think. Hey, listen, I will tell you now in 30 seconds what is one of the deepest teachings in every single mystical tradition in the world. And it's simply this. What you really are, your spirit, your essence, has no form. Which sounds crazy. But if you look, you'll see it's true. Your body has a form. Your mind is full of forms. The soul is full of forms. But the experiencer is looking, but you can't see it. It's listening, but you can't hear it. It's thinking, but it's not a thought. It's before all of that, and it has no form. So formless awareness right now is experiencing a flow of forms. A bit like a dreamer is experiencing a dream. But the dreamer is not in the dream. The dream is in the dreamer. The experiences are in awareness. Therefore, if you pay attention, if you take that magic thing called the attention and you throw it back on your own deepest being, there's this formless presence. And because it's formless, it has no boundaries. So my being is formless, your being is formless, the being of everything is formless. It's one being because there's no divisions between it. And so how can we find choice? How can we make the journey? Well, to make the journey of being a body in the world, a separate individual, the key is to wake up to the place where you're not a separate individual. Find that place of formless oneness, and you discover love, passion, choice, everything you need to really make the journey. While you're just stuck in the journey, you don't see all of that, and it can be really quite hard. And the more you find it, the more obvious it is. And then you can bring all of that knowing into creating the life you're living. And that's why it feels like the simple waking up can make such a difference to how we live our lives.
Amazing, brother. Another beautiful spiritual hammer just being dropped. I definitely resonate with everything that you said again there. So thank you for all your work and coming on today.
Hello. Welcome to Conscious TV. I'm Ian McNay, and today our guest in the studio is Tim Freke. And what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about meditation.
What meditation offers is one way that you can connect to that other state of consciousness, the deep awake state.
So how did you first start to meditate? Did you go to a course, or did you pick up a book, or how did you...
My journey has been through many formalities and learning lots of techniques and trying out many, many different forms of meditation. The older I've got, the more simple things have become. So for me, the breath, which is the most obvious and basic of meditation techniques, is the most powerful. That just to come into the moment with the breath as it comes in and out, that feeling, and to relax the body into it. It's just such a relief. Breath. And from that, there's a certain stillness. Now, it doesn't mean... See, whether the mind stops or not, to me, is not the issue. The mind's fine. The mind's not an enemy. I spent years thinking it was, but it really isn't. The mind is a great thing. We're using it now.
So you let your mind still do its thing?
The mind does its thing. The body does its thing. For me, in its deepest sense in meditation, is you're becoming conscious that you are conscious. So rather than paying attention to your experience, you turn attention back on itself. So you're conscious of the experiencer. What is awareness? What is witnessing this moment? And it's like sinking into this huge ocean of awareness. This is still going on, but it's not where my attention is now. It's happening. There's thoughts. Now, the stillness is important because if the thoughts are very agitated, it's very hard not to pay them attention. But if you can just let it be, there's this big oceanic, spacious presence that we are, which opens up. One way of seeing it is it's very much like entering the state we go to in deep sleep, but consciously. It's like deep sleep is our very being. That's what we are. We are this big awareness, but it's unconscious in deep sleep. In meditation, you're entering that same beautiful, you know what it's like when you wake up in the morning and you're refreshed, and it's so, you kind of remember it, don't you? Just that kind of, that was nice, that felt so good, and everything was relaxed, but you weren't conscious at the time. In meditation, you're diving back into that big space, but consciously. Now, of course, the danger is, the most obvious thing to happen is you actually fall asleep. And anyone who's meditated will know that you're gone. So you need something to keep you conscious. And what the breath does is it just keeps you here. I'm conscious, I'm with my breath, I'm not asleep, but I'm conscious of that big oneness, which I enter unconsciously in deep sleep. And that's why I call it being deep awake. And meditation will allow you to do that.
Do you find postures important?
Well, you're talking to someone who did a lot of that and now doesn't do any of that. And giving other people advice is something I'm always wary of, because it really depends on where you're at. If you feel you want to explore the fact that, if you've got an upright back, you're more likely to stay awake. I sit in the lotus position, and do it all, and people are always very impressed, and, look, he looks like a meditator. But it's not to do with that. It's not really to do with whether you've got a straight back and you can cross your legs in a weird way. It's to do with what happens internally. It's to do with where you put your awareness. So, personally now, I'm much more inclined to just sit in a chair or even just lie in bed.
It's
and just
about being
relax.
Comfortable,
About
being relaxed.
I want to be comfortable. I want to enjoy the experience. I don't like the word discipline. You set it up as a practice, a discipline. I must do it. You won't. That's my experience. Most people.
Yeah.
I mean, I know loads of people who think, if only I was meditating, I should be. And it's just another thing on the list. Make a living, look after the kids, meditate every day. And it doesn't happen. For me, the key is that meditation is a pleasure. It's a delight. It's an exploration. It's a chance to just be with life instead of having to do all the time. And the doing is really important, but how precious to have some being. On the way here in the London Underground today.
You were having a meditation?
Well, all the time. I mean, that's where I really want to meditate.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in the underground, or I'm, on a bus, or I'm traveling in a train, or I'm, whatever. All of those times. That's the time, all the time. Any time you've got a minute, let's go there. It doesn't have to be in their special room, and your special clothes, and your special posture. It's just exploring what we are. Because that's when life really feels right. It's worth living, when there's that love.
I know I find in my life, the more I bring that meditation energy, that awareness into my normal life, I live from that space, the more life is going to have more of a flow about it. I'm going to get less stressed out. There's going to be more to life.
Welcome to the TruthLover webinar and podcast, Empowering Enlightened Humanity. My name is Will Pye, And it's a great joy and pleasure to have my co-host Cheyenne with me today. And I understand you're going to introduce our esteemed guest today, Tim Freke.
Okay, Tim Freke is a pioneering philosopher and teacher of awakening. In his latest books, Deep Awake and Soul Story, he offers a new approach to spirituality and a visionary new understanding of the nature of the cosmos.
So we have a topic to guide us, and it's closely related with this extraordinary book. I really enjoyed hearing you chat in California recently, and you said that this latest book, Soul Story, is one of your favorite. And the central theme of it is emergent spirituality. And it feels really exciting to explore this with you, because this is very much on the leading edge of consciousness, of culture perhaps. So I'm interested to hear from you. What is emergent spirituality? What does that mean for you?
The essential idea which is underlying this is that we can bring the perennial insights of spirituality together with the amazing insights of modern science by understanding the simple principle that everything that has form has evolved. Everything has come into existence through a process of evolution, or to use this word which is very popular in science at the moment, emergence. The word emergence just means that through this process, been going on for 13.8 billion years, there has been a constant emergence of novelty. So at the beginning, there was hydrogen, and then that's evolved into everything. I mean, there's a wonderful line I love by the author and evolutionary thinker Brian Swim, who I'm a big fan of. And the way he puts it, which is lovely, is, what we've discovered is if you take hydrogen and leave it for long enough, it learns how to sing opera. I mean, it's an incredible, what a vision of reality. What that journey has been, that no evolutionary thinker would dispute, is that that's been a journey from simple matter, like hydrogen, through to this experience you and I are having of psyche, of ideas, of a realm not made of matter, actually. And how we see that development is crucial to whether we end up abandoning spirituality as something which is woo-woo and can never meet with this incredible development of modern science, or actually whether we can shift the perspective in science and shift the perspective in spirituality and bring the two together and create one beautiful, inspiring vision.
And yet this integration that we're talking about, if we look to Schrödinger, to Bohm, to Heisenberg, to Einstein, they probably would not have any problem or difficulty with this integration. Why do you think we find ourselves contemporarily with such resistance in scientific community to spirituality or to meaning or to purpose?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, materialism is dead. Philosophically, it died 100 years ago. But what has replaced it is a kind of objectivism. So it may not be matter, but it's something objective. It's still an objective reality. And you're right. In my previous books, I've written at length about all those scientific figures you talked about, saying, look, these guys were sort of mystics, really, Gnostics, nearly all of them. However, for me, what they're even saying is not enough, because what they will go with is a very non-dual spirituality. It's what they're being influenced by also. Of course, they are receiving an input from the East, which is coming in, as well as the development of quantum physics and all these Newton relativity. And they're at the vortex where that's just beginning to meet, and we've inherited all of that. So it's quite easy, I think, to bring together a form of spirituality which abandons something. What I love about emergence is it's the opposite of reductionism. Reductionism says if you want to understand something complex, you understand it by going to something which is simpler than it, or more basic than it, or primitive. Emergence says that's impossible because the new thing is greater than what has gone before and must be understood on its own terms. So the presence of life cannot be reduced to just chemicals. If you took the chemicals that make up my body and put them in a pile, you'd have a real trouble having a conversation with them. But put them in this and it creates life, oh my God, there's a whole different thing. Because biology is more emergent than physicality. It's a new level. I'm going, look, everyone's experiencing right now, everybody, a non-material realm. And you can call it imagination, mind, psyche, soul, whatever word you give it, I don't care. But you know you're experiencing it. And we are passing ideas
between us in that realm.
And this seems to be one of the most exciting things we can be involved on the planet right now, is to be consciously selecting, refining, exploring a new story for humanity. And we can see how our fundamental views of what this world is informs, in a very literal way, how reality unfolds. And so the recognition that this is a benign place, that there is actually somehow amidst the madness and the chaos and the inexplicable sufferings and intensities, and there is actually a deeper truth of all is wellness, of the presence of love, of a loving intelligence that's essential to this unfolding, not as a theology, but as a realization, as a knowing. And then that story, that communicated. I mean, this is, for me, such a better story than, we're all sinners or we're just some accident of biology. So it seems, again, just to point us back to this capacity for emergent spirituality to bring service to human culture, to human society, as we wake up to our very interesting position upon the planet right now.
I agree completely. And part of where I ended up with this new philosophy was wanting to revisit also this idea of God, of what I ended up calling transcendent spirit, because a lot of these old esoteric ideas have fallen into disrepute, and quite rightly. So we've talked a lot about soul. And in the same way, I think we can look at this whole nature of God in the same way. So my experience is there is this greater being of love and goodness, which I wake up into, which is there and is this huge benign quality to it, this safety and beautiful. I feel that when a soul wakes up to its fundamental oneness with all being, we enter a communion of souls. Unity consciousness. What does that feel like? Love. It is literally the emergence of a being of love. And the reason the world is not all perfect is because it's the being of love is not running the show. That this being of love is arising from the cosmos. It's the fruit of the whole evolutionary journey.
In the book, you talked about love light. And I like what you point to with that not being like the goal, like not trying to attain that space. For me personally, the experiences that I've had with it, it feels almost like a cosmic shower. Like when I've entered that space, it's like something's being cleansed, but I'm getting pushed back out again. And I want to be pushed back out again. So I just feel like you pointed to that, and I really appreciate how you framed it. Like it made it make more sense to me, actually.
I'm really pleased to hear that. So this is another aspect of the same themes that we've been touching on, but in a different way. So one of the experiences I recognize from my own sort of awakening experience is that very often, and this has been happening throughout history, you enter the communal dream, you enter the soul dimension, and there's this light, and this light is the oneness, it's the formlessness. And there's a great phrase actually that it is the luminous potentiality, which is perfect for me. It's like, yeah, that's the luminous potentiality. So the whole point actually is to go into the light and stay conscious. That's the big love. That's the bliss. That's the knowledge, the knowing. But to stay conscious is to retain your individuality. So that what we're doing is actually developing an individuality which is robust enough and deep enough to support these incredibly deep levels of consciousness, so that we can go into the love light and be in it as a discrete soul within the communion of souls. So that the light itself is actually, to use a metaphor which was actually given to me by somebody, she described the light and souls moving into it and out of it like sparks, which is actually an old Hermetic story as well. And what that's saying is the love light is all the sparks. That's what it is. It's the communion of souls. And you enter in, and there's the communion, and as you enter in, you're part of that, and you make that exist. And then you fall away. Why? Because the soul needs to keep evolving. Because that's what we're in. And to do that, we fall into other levels, like this one, and we have this experience. Because through this experience, we are forming what we are. That's what we're doing. We're creating ourselves. Every moment, actually, we're creating what we are. And that's not a mistake. It's not a waste of time. Everything that you've ever experienced, all of us, matters, because it all makes us what we are.
Oh,
That's beautiful.
It is beautiful, isn't it?
It is
beautiful. And I think I make this confession in the book, but I'll make it to you. The foundation for me, which we haven't talked about, is mystery, is not knowing. I mean, one of my previous books not very long ago was called The Mystery Experience, because what we're in is a breathtaking mystery. And waking up is of that mystery. It's the formless. It has no form. It's not anything. It just is. But we need the best story we can tell about the nature of life. So what this philosophy has really been generated by is a desire to tell a coherent, robust story which can intellectually engage with science to justify and hold up intuitions which emerge for me in the deep awake state. When I enter the deep awake state, there's these very simple certainty. What really matters is love. And this story, I hope, can hold that up and go, that's the deepest statement of the most emergent truth.
Beautifully put. Really appreciate the power and the precision of your words, because it's allowed us to dive pretty deep in a short period of time.